What if someone claimed they had a single flawless blueprint to fix literally every human problem?
Right, like every single one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about massive global crises here. Political corruption, environmental pollution, fraud.
And even the personal stuff, right.
Exactly, all the way down to intensely personal issues like, bad breakups, drug abuse, or just the feeling of being chronically lonely.
So a blueprint that doesn't just try to manage those problems, but claims to physically and structurally eliminate them from the human experience entirely.
Yes, completely wipe them out. And that is what we are unpacking today in this deep dive. We're looking at a highly provocative piece of writing from November 2021 by an author named Xuefeng.
Right.
It was translated by Kinyu, edited by Peter, and it carries a title that leaves, well, absolutely zero room for ambiguity.
Yeah, the title is pretty bold.
It's literally called, quote, "Only Xuefeng-style communism can solve these problems."
Which is quite the claim.
It really is. And before we dive into the actual mechanics of this, I want to make something very clear to you listening right now.
Yeah, we need to set the ground rules here.
Exactly. This source material, it contains some highly politically charged content. It makes incredibly sweeping, grand claims about societal systems, governance, human nature, all of it.
A whole 9 yards.
Right. And we are not taking sides here. We aren't endorsing, we aren't validating, and we aren't condemning these viewpoints either.
We are just the messenger.
Exactly. Our mission is simply to be your impartial guides, to help you understand exactly what ideas are contained within this specific text. We're here to, map the territory of the author's argument, not defend it.
And that's a crucial distinction, because the territory we are mapping today is, it's radical.
Very.
The text argues that none of our massive global issues can be solved by historical experience. It outright dismisses the religious teachings of Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam as solutions.
Just completely throws them out.
Right out the window. It claims Mao Zedong thought, the theories of Lao Tzu or Confucius, and even the modern Western system of the separation of powers, it says they have all definitively failed.
Wow.
According to the author, human suffering can only be solved by one specific framework, which is Xuefeng-style communism.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because the sheer scale of that claim is just staggering. The author is essentially wiping the entire historical slate clean.
Oh, absolutely.
But when I read the text, what really caught my attention wasn't just the arrogance of the claim. It was how this proposed system actually works.
Yes, the mechanics of it are fascinating.
It all hinges on this one core thesis, which is, and I'm quoting here, "Moral education is not as good as system construction."
And what's fascinating here is that that is the philosophical engine of the entire document. The author isn't asking people to be better people.
Right.
He isn't relying on preaching, teaching, or begging individuals to act ethically. In fact, he seems to think relying on human morality is just a fool's errand.
Yeah, it's completely useless to him.
Exactly. Instead, he demands a system where bad behavior is structurally and physically impossible.
I kept thinking of this like bowling with bumper lanes.
Okay, I like that.
Because in our current society, we try to teach everyone to be a professional bowler, right?
Yeah.
We spend years on moral education, religious instruction, legal threats.
Basically telling people, here's how you hold the ball, here's how you aim.
Yeah, please try really hard to hit the pins and not throw it in the gutter. But Xuefeng's text says, well, forget all that training, just put the bumpers up.
Right.
If the system has rigid, inescapable bumpers, a gutter ball isn't just frowned upon. It is physically impossible to throw.
But the immediate question that raises is, well, what are the materials used to build those bumpers? How do you construct a society where failure is impossible?
Right. How does this text actually build those bumpers in real life?
Well, Xuefeng's answer is a total top-to-bottom restructuring of the daily stages of a person's life, literally starting from the moment you were born.
So getting right into the daily reality of it?
Exactly. Let's look at how the text treats the two most vulnerable demographics, which are children and the elderly.
Okay.
In most modern societies, elderly care relies on either the traditional family unit, so children taking care of their aging parents, or it relies on state welfare systems and nursing homes.
And the text explicitly rejects both of those. It calls nursing homes of all kinds a, quote, very sad way of providing for the elderly.
Right.
But it also rejects the burden being placed on adult children. Instead, it proposes that the elderly live directly among youth and children in a fully integrated environment.
Which is a huge shift.
Yeah, the goal is for them to enjoy a comfortable, leisurely life simply by being absorbed into a vibrant, multi-generational community. Their care becomes everyone's passive responsibility, not one family's active financial burden.
Which fundamentally alters the entire concept of family, because the text doesn't stop at the elderly, right? It completely reimagines childhood.
Oh, this part was wild.
Yeah, under this system, a child's upbringing becomes a purely, quote, collective matter. It is completely removed from the biological parent's responsibility.
Wait, hold on. Taking kids entirely away from their parents?
Yep.
If you're listening to this on your commute right now, you're probably thinking, that sounds dystopian. You're just ripping families apart.
To a Western ear, absolutely, it sounds terrifying. But Xuefeng argues the exact opposite. He claims that the traditional family structure is actually the root of danger and inequality for children.
So?
Because if children live entirely in a collective, heavily monitored environment where they're raised by the community, the text argues that traditional pitfalls just disappear.
Okay, like what?
Well, kidnapping and selling children, for instance, becomes a logistical impossibility because children are never isolated with a single guardian.
I see.
Furthermore, the phenomenon of a child being spoiled, heavily indulged, or deeply misguided by the specific neuroses of individual parents that simply cannot happen when the collective is the single stabilizing force in their life.
And what's wild is that the author doesn't just present this as some pie-in-the-sky theory.
Right, he says he's done it.
Yeah, the text points to a very specific, real-world proof of concept. Xuefeng claims that this exact collective model has been tested and proven perfectly flawless by 11 years of practice at a place called Lifechanyuan's second home.
Right, this wasn't just a weekend retreat.
No, 11 years.
This was an 11-year experiment of people actually living without private property, raising children collectively, and integrating the elderly.
Wow.
The author is using over a decade of real-world implementation to say, look, the bumpers hold up under pressure.
Okay, so those are the bumpers for the beginning and the end of life. But I want to talk about the middle of life because this was easily one of the most surprising parts of the text for me.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, the author looks at the increasing number of single people, bachelors, and divorced individuals globally and asks a very blunt question. How should society solve their, quote, sex life problems?
It's a highly pragmatic view of human needs. The text argues that if a society doesn't solve the basic, intimate needs of its population, you inevitably get endless social problems, unrest, and public health crises.
Sure.
The claim is that Xuefeng's mode perfectly solves these issues for single people, to the point of structurally preventing sexually transmitted diseases.
But wait, the text does make a really interesting concession here. It admits that currently, even within this highly controlled community model, there is a bit of an integrity crisis.
Right. Things aren't perfect yet.
Specifically regarding emotional disputes and drama between men and women. Like, people are still getting their hearts broken, people are still getting jealous.
Because human emotions are messy.
Right. So explain Xuefeng's bizarre proposed solution to this romantic drama.
Well, his diagnosis of romantic drama is entirely logistical. He doesn't view relationship conflict as a psychological failure. He views it as a spatial failure.
A spatial failure.
Yeah. According to the text, the current problem is a lack of physical locations, which it calls homes. Right now, because there are a small number of these communal homes, people are stuck together geographically. So as time goes by, emotional disputes naturally arise.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit crazy. I read the part about how they plan to handle this romantic drama, and I honestly had to read it twice because it sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It's intense.
If two people are having an emotional crisis, the author doesn't suggest bringing in a mediator or going to couples therapy. The proposed solution is forced geographic relocation.
Exactly. Once the system is fully operational with a vast network of these homes, they will constantly shuffle personnel.
Just move them around.
Yeah. If you and someone else develop a toxic romantic entanglement today, tomorrow you might be sent to completely different geographic locations. The text actually states there will be little chance for them to see each other again for the rest of their lives.
Just think about the sheer force of that for a second.
It's permanent.
To solve heartbreak, jealousy, and toxic relationships, you structurally enforce permanent physical separation.
Yes.
The author argues that because of this constant shuffling and guaranteed separation, people simply won't waste their time working hard on feelings between men and women.
Right. What's the point?
Exactly. Instead, they will only work on their own qualities. If you can't be in the same geographic location as the person causing you emotional distress, the emotional distress technically ceases to be a societal problem. It is the ultimate logistical solution to a deeply human emotional problem.
And if this logistical isolation is supposedly so foolproof for lovers, it perfectly explains how the system handles the ultimate societal problem, which is crime.
Oh,
It
right.
uses that exact same spatial and environmental manipulation. Let's look at corruption.
Okay.
The text notes that for thousands of years, the problem of official corruption has been totally unsolvable. Officials accept government pay, eat the food provided by the common people, and then turn around and use their authority to bully those exact same people.
And the typical modern solution to that is better oversight, right? Like we put body cameras on police, we audit politicians, we demand transparency.
But the Xuefeng-style solution isn't to monitor the officials. The solution is to eradicate the concept of managers entirely. In this mode, there are absolutely no officials. Everyone is just a laborer.
The logic is ruthlessly simple, right? If the role of the official ceases to exist, the corruption caused by the official also ceases to exist.
Exactly.
But if I'm listening to this on my commute right now, I'm practically screaming at the dashboard, how does a society function with no managers?
It's a fair question.
Like, who decides who grows the food? Who decides who takes out the trash? How do you organize a vast network of communities without a single person in charge?
It works because personal property and personal interests have been entirely abolished.
Okay, break that down.
When everyone is a laborer and no one owns anything, there is no wealth to hoard and no power to leverage. The daily tasks aren't assigned by a boss. They're dictated by the system's underlying ideological framework. The text frequently references something called the 800 values for a new era human being.
Right, let's contextualize that because it sounds like heavy jargon. 800 values.
The 800 values is essentially the operating system for this society. It replaces standard legal codes and human management.
An operating system.
Yeah, you don't need a middle manager telling you what to do if your entire day, your duties, and your social interactions are strictly dictated by 800 highly specific community protocols. It replaces human judgment and hierarchy with a rigid, algorithmic behavioral code.
And that ruthlessly pragmatic logic applies directly to theft as well. Like, why will stealing become extinct in this system?
Not because people suddenly have a moral awakening.
Right, not because they suddenly respect private property. The text argues you won't steal because there is literally nowhere to store stolen goods. Even if you manage to steal something, there is no way for you to use it or sell it in a collective environment where all needs are provided for and currency doesn't dictate survival. The desire to steal is neutralized by the sheer physical impracticality of the act.
That same environmental forcing function applies to the food supply. We see massive issues with food safety and poison supply chains globally.
Right. All the time.
But the text guarantees that absolutely no one will manufacture poisonous or tainted food in this system. Why? Because the food you grow, harvest, and produce is the exact same food you and your immediate community are going to eat that night.
It's so pragmatic. I was thinking it's like an extreme survival video game.
How so?
Well, imagine a multiplayer game where the developers realize players keep hoarding items, exploiting the economy, and poisoning each other.
A pretty toxic server.
Yeah, and instead of banning the bad players, the developers just release a massive patch. They completely remove the steal button from the user interface, they remove the concept of inventory, and they force your character to consume their own crafted items.
That's a great analogy.
You physically cannot play the game maliciously anymore because the mechanics of malice have been patched out of the environment.
But there are vices that don't require inventory. What about drug abuse, prostitution, fighting, or bullying?
Right. How does a patch fix that?
The text claims these will almost cease to exist simply because there are no conditions and opportunities to do them in such a transparent collective environment.
See, this is where I have to push back, though.
Go for it.
Because the text adds a caveat there that really caught my eye. It says if you do try to do those things, if you try to start a fight or break the rules, you will have, quote, no place to stand in this civilized group, so you dare not do it.
Ah, yes.
Doesn't the threat of being instantly exiled from the civilized group imply a massive underlying fear-based compliance? I know the text frames this as a harmonious utopia guided by those 800 values, but do this or you have no place to stand. Sounds like a pretty heavy stick to beat people with.
This raises an important question, and it forces us to look at how the author defines harmony.
Okay.
The text explicitly links what it calls the integrity crisis directly to personal interests. It argues that when there is no conflict of interest between people, no money to fight over, no property to dispute, the integrity crisis vanishes.
Because there's nothing to fight over.
Right. In this mode, there is zero direct interest relationship between people. You literally cannot form cronies, you can't bribe anyone, you can't build special exclusionary relationships. By completely removing personal interests, the author equates that void with perfect integrity.
So you aren't compliant out of fear of going to a traditional prison. You're compliant because stepping outside the lines of the 800 values means you instantly lose your place in the only functional survival structure available.
Yes. Deviance equals non-existence.
Wow. It's an environment engineered to make rebellion suicidal.
Exactly.
Which naturally leads me to ask, well, if this logistical isolation is supposedly so foolproof, if no one is stealing, no one is fighting, the elderly are cared for, and kids are safe, then why is the system confined to just one small community?
Right, why isn't it everywhere?
Yeah. Why hasn't the rest of the world eagerly adopted Xuefeng-style communism? The text itself admits that this mode is, quote, difficult to popularize and difficult for people to accept.
The author is actually very clear-eyed about the resistance to his ideas. He identifies 3 specific opponents to this system.
Okay, who are they?
The first opponent is the government. Because every government is fundamentally made up of officials, and officials inherently want to enjoy special treatment and authority, they will naturally suppress a system where the concept of officials has been eradicated.
Well, that makes perfect sense from a self-preservation standpoint, but turkeys aren't going to vote for Thanksgiving.
Exact.
And the second opponent follows that exact same logic, the rich. The text says the wealthy are terrified of communism because their entire identity is based on being above the rest.
Right.
In a system of total structural equality, you cannot be above anyone else. So the rich will use their resources to actively suppress it. But the third opponent, this is the one that really stopped me in my tracks.
The common people.
Yes,
Yeah.
common people.
It's fascinating.
The text argues that even though ordinary working-class people are living difficult, exhausting lives under the current systems, they don't actually want this utopia. Why? Because secretly, lurking in the deep consciousness of almost every common person is the psychological desire to live better than others.
Yep.
In this perfectly equal system, that dream is mathematically impossible.
We connect this to the bigger picture. It is a profound indictment of human nature. Xuefeng is essentially arguing that the system he has built is objectively perfect, but human ego is the ultimate roadblock.
The ego of everyone, not just the rich.
Right, and it's not just the ego of the powerful politicians or the wealthy elite. It is the stubborn ego of the struggling working class.
It's like playing the lottery.
Oh, how so?
Well, people know the system is rigged against them. They know they're losing money every week. But if you ask them to abolish the lottery in exchange for a modest, guaranteed universal income, many would violently resist.
Because they want the chance to win big.
Exactly, because they want the infinitesimal chance of being the one who wins. They want the dream of unequal wealth. The text claims the common people would rather suffer and be exhausted in an unequal system than accept a perfectly harmonious society where they have absolutely no chance to elevate themselves above their neighbors.
The desire for inequality is what keeps people trapped in suffering.
Wow.
But the text doesn't end in despair. It pivotally claims that despite this psychological resistance from all 3 groups, people will inevitably enter this life mode sooner or later.
Inevitably.
Yes. And it specifically zeroes in on China, outlining exactly why this is the inescapable future for the country due to its special national conditions and its history.
Yeah, the author basically does a speed run through modern economic history.
He really does. He dismisses both major global economic systems when looking at China's future. First, he argues that the European and American capitalist road is completely unworkable in China, because historically the rich there face a constant crisis of survival. According to the text, if you manage to get rich under capitalism in China, you either get robbed and kidnapped by criminals, or a revolutionary movement takes you down.
Right.
And even more harshly, the text claims that when the government itself faces financial troubles, the wealthy become the targets of harvesting.
Harvesting. That is a chilling word choice. Capitalism is out.
Yep.
But then, in the very next breath, the text declares that the historical socialist road is also a definitive failure. Why? Because practice has proven that it simply didn't bring joy, freedom, happiness, or a blessed life to the common people.
Right.
I just have to pause and point out the sheer audacity of this historical sweep.
It's massive.
The author is dismissing modern Western capitalism and historical socialism entirely. He sweeps both of the dominant global ideologies of the 20th and 21st centuries off the table, declaring them bankrupt, just to clear the stage solely for his specific mode.
It is a remarkable narrowing of options. By systematically declaring every other historical, religious, and political framework a total failure, the author paints humanity into a corner.
Yeah.
He positions his model not just as a fringe alternative, but as the only logical conclusion for human development.
So what does this all mean? We finally arrive at the text's astonishing grand finale claim.
The big reveal.
The author states that no matter how educated you are, even if you are bursting with extraordinary intelligence, wealth, and ability, you cannot build a better system than this.
But he goes even further into the realm of the absolute.
Oh, yes, he does. The text literally declares that even if you are the second coming of Jesus Christ, or the Maitreyan Buddha, or the Xuefeng saint, you absolutely cannot create a more perfect lifestyle for human beings than Xuefeng-style communism.
Let's pause on those names to understand the weight of that claim. Jesus Christ is familiar to a Western audience, but the Maitreyan Buddha is considered the future Buddha of this world in Buddhist eschatology, the ultimate enlightened being who will eventually appear to bring complete salvation.
Okay.
And the Xuefeng saint is a highly specific Chinese prophetic figure, a divine sage destined to unify the world and bring about lasting peace.
So Xuefeng is saying, don't wait for divine intervention. Don't wait for a messiah. Because divinity itself couldn't design a better logistical supply chain than what he has already built.
Exactly. The text acts as a remarkable artifact of utopian absolutism. It represents a worldview that attempts to bypass human morality entirely.
By building those bumpers.
Yes. Instead of hoping for better humans, it engineers an inescapable physical, social, and geographic structure. It is absolute in its belief that every other attempt to organize humanity has failed, and that the only path to a problem-free existence is total structural control.
And that brings us right back to you, the listener, and our bumper bowling analogy from the beginning of this deep dive. Think about your own life, your workplace, or your local community.
How often do we try to fix systemic problems by just begging people to behave better?
Exactly. We ask for more patience in traffic. We ask for better communication in our relationships. We demand more integrity from our politicians. We keep asking people to throw the bowling ball perfectly straight down the lane.
And we keep getting gutter balls.
Right. This text, as provocative and extreme as its solutions are, forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Are we wasting our time relying on human morality when we should just be changing the structure of the environment?
It challenges the very foundation of how we approach societal improvement. It asks whether freedom is worth the suffering it inevitably allows.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. Let's go back to that fascinating claim the author makes about the common people, the idea that we secretly prefer a life of suffering over a life of perfect equality, simply because we want the chance to be better than our neighbor.
The lottery ticket.
Yes. Imagine if a supposedly perfect, pain-free utopia were offered to you tomorrow. No crime, no heartbreak, no financial ruin. You would be perfectly safe and perfectly provided for.
Sounds pretty good.
But to enter it, it required you to surrender every ounce of your individuality, your privacy, and your ambition to ever rise above the crowd. Would you actually take it? Or does human nature secretly prefer the struggle?